Okay, and we're live. So, and we're even early for once. Usually, when we do these, we're about 10 minutes late to the party. So this is good. This is an improvement. This is the Roll20 dev team. I'm Riley Dutton,
I'm Richard Zayas.
And I'm Nolan T. Jones.
and we are here today to talk with you live about any and all questions about Roll20. So, for those of you who don't know, I bet everyone watching this does, but we'll go ahead and plug it anyway. We have a new update coming out May 28th, and that is going to be called we've nicknamed it Data Delve, and it's mostly dealing with improvements to the dice roller with our new quantum roll system and
Data or data?
Data Delve is what I say. How do you say it?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it's data.
I don't know. I feel like we should.
If you're a
actually-
person, then you call it data. The other terminology is data.
Okay.
So anyway, yes, quantum roll, and then we've introduced our character sheets feature, which is very exciting. And people, if you haven't seen any of this, you can go to our blog and read all about it. But again, most of you have already seen all this stuff. And then we're also upgrading our servers so that your Roll20 experience in terms of loading pages and browsing the forums and all that good stuff is hopefully faster and sped up. So we're really busy behind the scenes getting all of that put together. We've written thousands of new lines of code for the character sheets feature. We're working with the community to develop some community-created character sheets. We've got like 25, I think, as of this morning, game systems that people have made sheets for, and there's more being added every day. And yeah, so that's the overview of what we're doing and why we're doing it. So should we jump right in with a question, or does
We can
anyone
start
you
into
guys want to say
questions.
anything? Okay.
I like questions. People ask questions. There's actually so in addition to just probably taking questions from the YouTube channel, we also took questions in advance for once, which is fun because
Yeah, and if you do have a question there, you can leave a comment on the YouTube page, or for the Hangout. We'll be using that too. So I don't really know how it works, but supposedly it's a way for people to ask questions. So if you figure that out, we'll see the questions you ask. So feel free to do that too. Okay. What was the first question, Nolan?
the first question comes from Michael. I should have asked where people are. That would have been Michael in.
Michael, Spokane, Washington.
He's curious about future feature requests if we're going to have index cards for things like Fate and other games. He's been really happy with the deck of cards, makes for a good inventory system. However, we usually use index cards that you can write on as a way to record temporary aspects. Are there plans to do that, to have cards where you can write notes on them and things like that?
Well, we actually there's kind of a wonky workaround for this already, although I know it's probably not very good. What some people do is they just create, you can use the drawing tools to create a colored shape, and then you can just write text on top of it. The problem with doing that is that the text can only be edited by the person who originally created it, and I know some games are more collaborative than that, where you have lots of people who need to edit what's on the note card at once. So that doesn't work so good, but it works okay. I know that people who play like Fiasco, that's usually what they do when they set their game board, is they just put the post-it notes down like that. But it's something that I definitely think we're looking into adding. We don't want to give too much away about our next update after Data Delve, just because A, we're still focusing on Data Delve pretty heavily right now internally, and B, because we haven't planned it all yet and we don't know what it's going to have. But I do know that support for, like we're going to be redoing some of the card features and just trying to support. I think we're kind of an eye toward more board gamey type games is possibly what we're doing. So, and I know index cards is something that a lot of RPGers use it too, but I know definitely a lot of board games, it's much more vital to be able to have those little pieces of information that you can just quickly throw on the board, take off the board, and edit collaboratively. So I guess the short answer to the question would be yes, we're definitely looking into doing some kind of index cards feature. So I can't say yes, it's 100% happening, because again, we haven't planned out the next update, but it's on the radar.
I think it's fair to say that there's going to be all sorts of changes coming to cards. As question as for what makes that cut. We'll see, but there's already workarounds for doing what you're asking. Is the
kind of depending on if you really need to have everybody editing the index card, or if it's just a visual thing where you like index cards. You can also get a background image of an index card if you don't want to use the shape tool.
I mean, Fate, it definitely helps to have an index card, but there's several ways to, because essentially you've got an attribute for something that's influencing what's happening at the table. So like there's a thorn bush and it's going to affect everybody where you're fighting, and you can kind of play the thorn bush to interact with what's going on. So it helps to be able to have something like you're passing that attribute around the table. I know it's not called an attribute. I forget what it's called, but I understand what Mike.
Well, anyway, I think
asking.
again, yeah, there's a workaround, but you're probably already aware of it. So to answer your actual question, yes, we're looking into that feature, and I'd say there's a decent chance it will show up at some point in the future. I just don't know when exactly.
Okay. Since we got that question, let's talk about Maple's question. It's also about features in card decks. I really love that once cards are thrown down on the table, they retain attributes like ordinary tokens. However, once the cards get picked up, the attributes disappear. Could it be possible for those attributes to stick around until the card is discarded?
Possible. Anything is possible. I mean, I don't know. If there's enough demand for it.
I wonder what what the mindset is behind that. I'd be curious for games where you want where you want to stick something on a card and make it permanent. But usually if you're playing a game with a card and you're like putting a token on it or something like that to a counter on it for how many times it's been used or something like that, after it's discarded or put away, those
goes in your hand. Yeah.
Yeah, those counters disappear. So I'd be curious, Maple, what the game type is that you're doing that requires that. That's one of those things. It's really helpful to sit down and play some of those fringe scenarios so we have an understanding of. It's one of those things like Savage Worlds Initiative is one of the first things we programmed into Roll20 as far as card deck to initiative, but we didn't even we understood the feature, and then the first time we sat down to play a Savage Worlds game, it took you 3 minutes, Riley, to be like, we're changing this, like we're making it better.
Yeah, we had a really basic version of it where you could drag and drop it on the initiative order, but it didn't sort by the card type properly, and something else. Oh, you had to individually drag each card on. So like if you had 10 turn orders, you had it. So we played one game of Savage Worlds where we were actually playing Savage Worlds for real, and I was like, okay, no, this isn't gonna work. Yeah, as opposed to just someone telling us this could be a cool feature. And then I really got it, and I was like, okay, this is not really helpful what we have right now. We need a feature where it just deals a card to every single thing in the turn order, and then you can sort by the card type, and it takes into account things like tiebreakers based on suit and all that stuff. Yeah. So now we have both those things. And so, sadly, I wish I could say that I had time, we all had time to sit down and play every single game out there, which is why we take your feedback seriously, because we know that you're having pain points in the games you want to play, and we want to support as many games as possible. But sometimes until you actually sit down and really understand, why it's useful, so again, why are index cards useful, tell us how you're actually using them, then I might be able to be like, oh, I totally get it now, and,
But that's one of those things, too. I'm starting to do more and more of that. So if there's a game out there that you want us to have a better understanding of, that you can kind of tell they mustn't have tried this out, hit me up. I'm actually right now on the Roll20 forums. I'm advertising for a half dozen game types that I'm trying to get some play in to learn a little bit more about. So. And
we actually just went to PAX East, and one of the things that I did a little bit of was I went to the tabletop gaming area and I sat down and tried to play. I played the Star Wars mini game. Wasn't that what it was called?
So Star Wars miniatures and
so with the little thing, you put the template down on the board, and then you move the little pieces around with the template. And I had never seen that before. I had never seen template-based miniature game movement. Like I had no idea that was a thing. And then I saw it, and I was like, oh, I get how this is useful. You don't have to have a ruler. You don't, it makes it really easy to figure out how the rotation is very important. So maybe Roll20 is a feature where you can put where something can follow a template. I don't know, but that's a mechanic I had never been exposed to before, that I then learned just because I was able to play that game at PAX East when someone was running a game of it. So we do try, but there's just so many games. I mean, on the other hand, we also saw PAX East. How many hundreds of booths were there that all had interesting new games, and I mean, it's just and every game designer comes up with new stuff, which is on the one hand great. Yay, new stuff. But on the other hand, sometimes I'm just like, how many different ways are there to roll a dice? Like, we're going to roll the dice, subtract 2 of them, only re-roll it if it's a 3 or 2, and it's like, oh my gosh, this 2d6, that really won't cut it?
It's one of the things that you do come up with interesting things. Simple System being a Simple System Kickstarter that's going on right now. The guy actually designed the game in Roll20, and it was interesting to see, the way he was using card decks to put ranges as far as like a hard check, it wasn't, well, now you're rolling a d12 as opposed to a d10 or whatever it was. Now you're pulling from a different area of cards, or a different area of the card is what's indicating, since this is a hard check, and it's a little more stringent. Okay, this is really a hard check. It's not just a broader range where you've got the same chance plus 2. It was interesting to see the way the mechanic played out. So there's something to be said for some of that innovation. Well, when we've been talking about the Penny Arcade's game Thornwatch, and what they're doing with wounds, and the way they use the card deck, that it takes up spots in your hand. If bad things happen to your character, that it permanently scars areas of your hand and things like that. I don't know. Sometimes it's good to reinvent the wheel a little bit.
I'm just saying. I mean, if you're making a really niche
I think it's good for the hobby. It's hard to when you're trying to make everything work for everyone.
Yeah.
It's hard to.
Yeah.
When everybody just, you know what? Let's just reinvent a whole new mechanic where it won't ever work digitally, but yeah.
Uh-oh.
Richard just got eaten.
I will say that the other thing is, when it comes specifically to dice mechanics, Roll20. The cool thing about Roll20, I think, is since it is just supposed to emulate a regular tabletop, you can roll any dice. Like even if you have those crazy mechanics, like roll 2d6, re-roll on 3s and 2s, keep 1s, add 6, whatever. I mean, you could just be like roll 3d6. And then you can see what happens just like you just rolled on the table. And then you can look at those results and say, okay, I need to roll 2 more d6s, and I need to add 1 to this result. You can do all that math in your head, and you can roll those dice just like you could on a tabletop. But what people want is they want the automation and the auto-calculating and the adding everything up so they can just do this roll and just see the result. And that's one of the places where virtual tabletops do have an advantage over in-person plays, so we want to try to support that when we can. But at the same time, there's just so many mechanics out there. We don't have time for every single game, unfortunately, sometimes. So, but just remember, you can always roll 3d6, just regular 3d6, and then just look at the results and do the next step and do the next step just like you would if you're playing in person. But it just, obviously I get why the convenience factor is something people want. Okay, let's go on to the next question. We've been on this.
Next question. Next question is by Anonymous. Feature request. So the new FX stuff that we added in Rugged Reroll is awesome. When will we see some more different types, beyond fire?
Yeah, well, I meant to do that, and then I just ran out of time. So it's actually pretty cool because the particle engine that powers the special effects engine is completely just driven by settings and variables. So it's not like I have to actually go in and make like a fire graphic or something. I just have to tell it, okay, start at red, go to yellow. This is how they emit. This is how long they last. This is what directions they go in. So in theory, we could open that up to the community to create their own special effects by just playing around with those variables and seeing what the result is. And that's what I always intended to do. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. And honestly, we haven't heard a lot of feedback on the special effects feature, if I'm being honest. Like, you're one of the first people I've heard say, I really love it and use it all the time.
That's true.
So if there's anybody, of you 35 people watching right now, if you love the special effects feature and you love using it all the time, or your GM uses it in your game and it really makes a difference, let us know, because we prioritize what we work on based on that kind of feedback. So if I don't hear anybody saying I love it, then I don't work on it anymore.
It's funny. I don't hear much about it, but I'll say a lot of the Twitch streams out there seem to use it bunches because it's
really
it's one of the things that's very visual when you're broadcasting to a couple hundred people and you want to look at our stream, we're doing something cool, and they'll pop in the fire or whatever.
Got ya, yeah. Well, anyway, so I'd love to open it up to the community and make a little editing tool where you could make a particle effect and then you just share it and then people just copy and paste it in their campaign. But again, it's just all about development time. We have limited amounts of it, and we have to prioritize things. So the answer is yes. I'd love to add more, and it can definitely do more than just fire. It can do any type of particle effect, but I just haven't had the time to do it. So.
Okay. So next up, question from Joel. Is there going to be a way to import character sheets from other character sheet builders? Is the gist of the question. So are we going to work with any external? I'm actually going to take that one. We've looked at it, we've talked about it, but at the same time, when we inquired about it in our most recent poll, the overall answer from users was that they would prefer for us to do the features that any outside website is already doing. I don't know if we're going to go that far and jump into that. That's an ongoing conversation, but it definitely, by what we saw Roll20 users saying, it was don't make me have to go spend money on another website. was kind of what it felt like, but I don't know if that's still not 100% decided, because there are definitely websites that are going beyond what we intend to do with the character building. So, is that accurate?
I mean, I think the answer right now is we just don't know. I think there's, even if we decided tomorrow we were going to do it, I'll say this, that it's everybody, the way everyone does character sheets right now is very different. Yeah. So it would not just be a question of we magically wake up in the morning and decide, hey, I really like program X. Let's import for program X. It's a lot of work, and B, we'd have to, probably work there. Our team would have to be open to the idea. We'd have to work closely with them to do it, and all that kind of stuff. So I think, I'm not saying we haven't decided one way or the other, like Nolan said, but even if we decided yes, it's not going to be anything that happens in the next 2 weeks or something, because it's going to take a lot of effort to make that happen. So honestly, RPG software is kind of a clusterfuck right now in terms of everybody does it differently, and so it's, what I mean. How much effort do we spend trying to let people import their previous work versus just saying, look, we do it a completely different way than they did it. You're gonna have to just do it over. Versus, like Nolan said, they have a feature we're never going to implement, so maybe it makes sense. I don't know. This character sheets is so new for us. We're still spending all of our time just getting our version of it to work. Like, I'm still spending 10 hours a week just fixing bugs that the mentors are finding, when they make their character sheets. Why doesn't this repeating section work right? Or I need these radio bubbles to work. And so we're still way, far away from saying, okay, our character sheet system works exactly how I want it to. It has all the features we want it to have. Now let's spend development time making it work with somebody else's program. I mean, that's like priority list number 10 on our list of things to do. So,
but also, I do think that there's something to be said, as we were talking about earlier. We kind of go where the user feedback is, and we pretty directly asked this question in the last giant survey we did, and people were like, eh.
Well, I don't know.
So,
I thought it was less clear cut than that, personally, but
it was more than half,
but barely. Anyway, let's move on. Next question.
Solid. The next question, here's a softball. There will be no disagreement between the dev team on this question. Are you going to be at Gen Con? From John.
No.
That's a lie.
Lies.
Yes, we're going back to Gen Con. We've got at least one panel going on right now. It's a 2-hour session. We're going to go in depth. And then we've got a few other things that I'm kicking around, trying to see if I can't get some other people to sit down with and do panels on a few different things. And I've gotten some feedback from some exciting folks in the industry, so we'll see what happens on those.
But yeah, we'll definitely be there, and I don't know if we'll have. I mean, let us know if you're going to be there, because if enough people who use Roll20 are there, we've never done this in the past, but I would consider doing some kind of meetup at the very least.
Oh, yeah.
A night out someplace or whatever people want to do, but it's just usually there's like 5 Roll20 users who are there. That we know in advance.
There were more than that last year. Last year
at the panel there are.
We were like.
But I just assume that half those people have never heard of us before, but are curious what we are.
There seem to be a lot of people there.
Like 100. Serious Roll20 is my #1 tabletop passion people there, then I will, then we can, besides the panel, then we can.
I think the numbers are going to be increasing on that. On that note, if you're looking to look really cool at Gen Con, we are running a Teespring campaign right now for new T-shirts, and I'm excited about the new options on that. Maybe get some V-necks, maybe get some. There's a black Roll20 tee, which is outside the branding. Blue.
Yeah, what about the bright orange?
The branding. It's not a bright orange, it's a bright green.
Bright green, yeah, neon green. Okay, what's the next question?
Next question. This is an anonymous question. Oh, this is right in Riley's gut. Please
Uh,
explain the history and reasoning behind tags versus folders.
oh
I get
gosh.
the tags have multiple items in multiple places. With folders, you have to duplicate an item, or nested folders in some case, but I find it frustrating dealing with an individual item's tagging far outweigh the occasional space savings.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Like, if you want to know the answer to that question, all you have to do is go back and look at like the last 4 of these we've done, and they're on our YouTube channel. I mean,
Well, no,
we get this question every time.
I
So
think I think though that there's something there as far as a squeaky wheel.
there are people who do not who to me it's a preference thing. There are people who don't like tags, and there are people who don't like folders.
I would say though that the most people use folders because most people are Windows based.
And yet, if you look at some of the operating systems that traditionally do things before Windows does, like Mac or like Linux, they are switching to a system where, like on my Mac now, they want to get rid of folders almost entirely. Like now, the only link on the sidebar is all my files with a search bar. Like they're trying to get rid of that whole concept. So I'm just saying that's not a good example.
I feel like the thing that people should think about in terms of tags is that it works really well if you do it as you go. Because what happens with folders it ends up being like a cleaning up the mess afterwards type thing. Whereas tags, like if you're doing it as you go, it becomes much more intuitive.
I think what people really want is it's not about folders versus tags. I think they just want a tree view is what I think they want.
Yeah.
And I know that traditionally that's folder based, but that doesn't mean you can't have a tag based tree view. But part of what my frustration with this question is always, this is one of those things where as a designer of a program, people come to you and a lot of times they tell you what they want, because they don't understand what's possible. Like they just say, I want folders. Well, it would be helpful if I knew like the actual reason, like what's the actual difficulty you're running into. Like when you're playing a game, what are you doing that's causing a pain point for you that makes you think I want folders? So if I can get back one step to that, I can maybe look at, okay, that's a pain point that we could solve with our current tagging system, or maybe we need a tree view, or maybe X, Y, and Z. There needs to be some kind of other way we're doing it. And maybe folders is the answer, but when it turns into this just big giant folder versus tags debate, it's really hard to actually have a discussion about it because clearly there's benefits to tags and there's drawbacks, and clearly there's benefits to folders and drawbacks, and it ends up being a tie, and then nobody gets what they want, and people still have pain points. So I need to not know. I need to not just know, I love folders. Please put in folders. Like I need to know, like I'm in the middle of a game playing, and I can't quickly, like someone today posted something on the Mentor forums.
As this person says, they just find it frustrating dealing with each individual item's tagging. Like they don't want, they want it to just have one area.
What does that mean? They find it, I mean, like someone in the Mentor forums today actually said something that I thought was a valid point, which was that they have a situation where they have characters that, like, they have, like, say one player controls like 6 different characters. And so they want a way to quickly group those together so that that player doesn't have to scroll through the whole character list or whatever just to find those characters and stuff like that. Now, I mean, okay, I can see how that might make sense, and maybe there needs to be a better way to do that so that you can reorder things in the list or something. I don't know, but at least that's a reason I can see, like, I get why that would be frustrating. I get how that slows your game down. I get that makes sense to me. When you just say I want folders, and this comes up on the forum like once a month, so I guess I'm probably slightly sensitive / tired of talking about this. But anyway, so that's the answer.
That's not how that works.
The reason we did it in the first place, if that's the question, is just because I prefer tags and I did it. So, I mean, there's some things like that. Like, it was my program when I made it, and I said I like tags, and I thought it was better because for the reasons you outlined. I think I like tags better because I can tag multiple things, with multiple tags, and then when I'm making a monster, I can tag it monster and the name of the room it's going to be in, and the name of the the encounter, and then I can see all the monsters in that encounter, or all the monsters in that room, or all the monsters they're going to fight tomorrow, or you know what I mean? I can have so much more power to see different views.
Yeah.
But apparently, obviously, I get there's people that disagree with that decision. So, but I don't want to waste a lot of time talking about it again because we covered this to death. So.
Next up is from Zach's feature request. Curious if there could be a 24-hour clock option, as the AM and PM system is confusing.
On what? On the looking for group?
Yeah, I'd assume looking for group and or just what time your game is starting, things like that. if we could switch to a 24-hour clock.
I mean, that would largely that's just really a presentation issue because the computer, if you want to know the nitty-gritty details, the computer server stores it as number of seconds since the Unix epoch, which is when the Unix, like it's like some date in like 1970 or something, when the first official Unix computer was turned on, or some random Unix designer decided that was like the start of time essentially for Unix computers. So the computer that stores it in that idea, and then it translates it into your local time zone and displays it, using AM PM. So that would just be adding an option in your settings for your profile where I'd prefer to see 24-hour time, and then you would just see them all as 24-hour times. So yeah, I could look at adding that.
Okay, I think let's see.
Well, we have like a ton of questions piling up on this Q&A app. Are you seeing these?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay. You just want to start at the top?
Sure.
Okay. So I click select.
At the bottom? Is the top or the bottom?
Well, this is the most upvotes.
Okay.
Yeah. So now the question is, or you see it?
Yeah. From Darren?
Yes. Are you going to read it? You want me to read
Sure. I don't know if it's been asked, but in the future will it be possible for a game master to make a token visible to one or more players and not all players when on the token layer?
It has come up before. I mean, I suppose it might be possible. Well, again, I would be curious to know what the play style mechanic you're trying to emulate is. Again, this is where it helps
it's
to
just
know
the magical beast that can only be seen by.
Yeah, this is a ghost that only you can
nobody else's.
see or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that makes sense. I mean, yeah, you have a ghost or like a spirit or something that can only be seen by certain players. Yeah, I mean, that'd be possible to do. Yeah,
I probably would make it back into the development cycle till we look back at tokens again.
Yeah,
Which might be
that's probably a good point. Moving on, I can't.
Considering it had 6 upvotes, I guess I'll definitely add that. I will definitely add that to the to-do list for a future update. So.
Let's move on to the next one with a bunch of upvotes from Josh. I can't actually cycle the questions. If you can cycle the question for me.
Okay. Yeah.
Josh Essinger is asking, he loves the dynamic lighting mechanics and would love to see expanded options like vision versus light radius. For example, I've got an elf carrying a torch. The elf has low light vision so they can see up to 40 feet with the torch. A human can only see 20, and an orc can see 60.
I'd say this is the number one thing that is not in the dynamic lighting system that we hear about all the time, is multiple different types of vision. And some systems like Pathfinder and D&D 3.5, rely on this a lot more than other systems do, like Dungeon World, whereas there's no concept of different types of lights and all that stuff. So the only reason it's not in so far is because we always start simple and then build on more stuff. So we start with really basic dynamic lighting, then we add on the line of sight in the last big update for dynamic lighting, and then the next update will add on even more stuff, and that will probably most definitely be one of the things we look at adding. It just adds more complication to the system, not only from the rendering program, that kind of perspective, the programming perspective, but even from a user interface perspective. I've seen other tabletops. I think there's one other tabletop that has something like this, and honestly, it's like the hardest thing in the world to figure out how to use properly and to make sure you have it set up right. And you're constantly asking yourself, can they see that? Can they not see that? Did I set this up right? Did I not? I mean, it's just like a nightmare. So the key for us is not just asking ourselves, can we put this in from a programming perspective, which I know I can.
It's feature bloat.
It's feature bloat and ease of use. I mean, and not only from it's an advanced feature, so who cares if it's easy to use, but still, at the same time, if you as a GM are wasting an hour of your life setting up this feature and then you don't even know if it's working right because you're not getting the right kind of feedback from the program, that's a problem. If it's slowing down your game because you're constantly running issues with it because it's really hard to use and hard to understand, then it's a waste of our time to put it in the first place. Yeah. So, I'll just say, this definitely on our to-do list for the next update to dynamic lighting, which will probably be an update or two away at least. But it will only go in if we can figure out a way to do it right. And that's the same thing with character sheets. I mean, the reason we didn't do those for so long, even though it might have seemed obvious to do them, was because we kept asking ourselves, how do we do this in a way that's easy to use, in a way where you can design your custom sheets, that you don't have to have a PhD to figure out how to make your own custom sheet and all that kind of stuff. And it took us till this update to figure that out. And I think we've really nailed it. And I think when people see it, they're going to be like, wow, this is amazing and it's easy to use and this is exactly how it should be. But until we get a feature to a point where that's what you would say. I never want to put a feature in if the way people react to it is like I don't how do I do this?
Where am I going? What's
where
happening?
am I going? What am I doing? Let's just ruin my game. So, but yeah, I'd say it's definitely on the to-do list, and if we can figure out a way to do it, then we'll definitely do it.
Yeah.
So.
Next question from Nick. Would it be possible to add voice modulators for DMs to produce monster and creature voices in real time? I would say in that area, because we get a lot of questions about things like side conversations for voice and video and things like that, is that we are just now reaching a point where our basic voice and video is better than the on-the-side options out there. Like, only with Rugged Reroll did we finally get to a point that our voice and video was really, the in-app voice and video was bam. So to go to the point now where we're already adding special effects and stuff to that, I think that's getting ahead of anything that's coming soon. So.
Yeah, and from a technical standpoint, I'm not even sure it's possible. Well, I mean, obviously we'd have to be talking about the WebRTC stuff, not obviously anything. We have no control over Google Hangouts or anything like that, how that works. So you have to be using the WebRTC, and then I don't know if there's a way to intercept the audio coming in from your microphone and then do stuff to it with the Web Audio API in JavaScript, which is what we'd have to do. If that's possible, then technically it might be possible. I'm not sure, but I'm not even sure that you can do that. So. The way WebRTC works, it's from a developer perspective, it's very plug and play, which is a good thing because it's easier to set up, but it also gives you less control over, the final result. You just have to kind of trust that the browser knows what it's doing. So, yeah.
Next question from Tabletop Gaming. Hey guys, would it be easy to make the Transmogrifier list of items in your campaign show up in a default alphabetical order instead of random? So it'd be easier to search for that specific item you're looking for instead of hundreds of handouts to go through.
The answer to that question is yes. I just haven't done it yet. So I'll put down the list.
Would it be easy? Yes.
Would it be easy? I mean, nothing's ever that easy.
In theory.
And then I'll spend 3 hours fixing bugs. But,
yeah.
I mean, it's possible. So I'm going to put alphabetical order.
I guess for people who do transmog a lot, that'd probably be quite helpful. Especially for like Pathfinder Society folks.
Well, it's hundreds of handouts. Yeah, that's something that we ourselves have not gotten to the. We aren't playing any games that have hundreds of handouts.
It's true. It's very true. It's very true. And I don't use the Transmogrifier very much personally either. I mean, I just really don't have a reason.
Start a new campaign.
Yeah, I mean, every time I play a game, it's a new thing, so I'm not really transferring things between campaigns very much. But I know that there's a lot of GMs out there that run multiple game sessions every week, where they're doing the same story with multiple groups, that kind of stuff. Where that's really what the Transmogrifier is for. So, but anyway, I'm actually surprised. Like everything really should be in alphabetical order everywhere. Like, and like just for this last update, I was working on the token settings panel, where you pick the attribute if you want to link it to a bar, and I noticed those aren't in alphabetical order, and I was like, dang it! So I had to put in some code to make those show up in alphabetical order. So everything should be in alphabetical order. It just it's an extra step I have to do when I put it in, and a lot of times I just wasn't thinking about it when I did it. And a lot of times, too, when I test things, there's like 1 or 2 items, so I may not even realize it, but then it's really obvious when there's 100 items in the list. It's like, oh, this really needs to be in some kind of alphabetical order so I can sort through it all. So.
Yeah. Next question. By the way, we're about a half hour in. If people would be so kind to maybe tweet and get more folks. We got a good number of people watching, but we could definitely always have more. So if people want to throw a tweet out there with the YouTube link, we would appreciate that. This next question comes from Andrew. With the new Data Delve update, is it possible to have specific character sheets on a character per character basis, or are they going to be defaulted to the group? So I feel like this is a Dungeon World style question.
Yeah. Which the answer is right now. It's just, go ahead.
Yeah.
This is Drew. Drew's asking this question.
Yeah.
We met him at PAX East.
Yeah. He was one of Fernando's buddies. Fernando Dominguez on the marketplace. If you haven't checked out his stuff, it is gorgeous. But yeah, and he's got to be asking this about Dungeon World because I know the things that he's looking at in the world. I know what you're up to. But yeah, right now I think that it's going to be an overall per system is what we're looking at. And so I mean you could set up in advance sheets within a game that were diversified in that, like it's not going to be different fields, but you could fill in the attributes or whatever to make some of that work if you've got the initial sheet broad enough, but nothing yet where I'm playing this system and 10 sheets automatically load as options. We are not to that level of complication yet.
Yeah, I mean, what we're planning on doing in the future is multiple layouts. So you can't ever play in a game where somebody is using a Pathfinder sheet and somebody else wants to use, for some reason, a D&D 4e sheet on their character. Let me just say that will never work. I don't know why you would ever want to do that, but someone will come along and be like, but we want to use Pathfinder and D&D 4e sheets the same. Like, that's never going to work. So just that will never work.
Insanity. But with something like Dungeon World, where you've got like default class character sheets.
Right, and each class has its own type of sheet layout, and that's what we're looking at doing, is giving the character sheet creators a way to say, this is one layout, this is another layout, and it's all the same sheet, and they would have mostly the same fields, obviously, but then there's just, okay, well, the wizard has a spell section, whereas the fighter doesn't, they have a different kind of section. So that is coming. I don't know if it's going to make it before before May 28th, or if that's going to be a future update thing, to be honest. We're kind of getting down to we're getting down to crunch time. Like, if I'd like to have a feature freeze at least 2 weeks in advance of the update coming out to make sure that we squash as many bugs as possible. So.
And it also helps on the documentation side.
Oh, yeah.
That we're not changing things. Like, in those last 2 weeks, there's so much in terms of, like, here's where the feature is, here's how you use it, and then you go in and you change things, and you're like, oh, well, I should change 6 other things, and suddenly the documentation, we're up the night before till 1 a.m. going, oh. Yeah,
so everyone hates me when I do that. So it's a constant battle, really, between everybody on the Roll20 side not wanting to do more documentation and all the players wanting more features. So when they don't get more features, you should blame them, not me. That's
what?
really
that's a bold-faced lie. That is a lie.
Anyway, but yeah, so I still have the character vault is the next thing that I'm working on in terms of this update that I still have to get done for sure, because we've already talked about doing that, and all the Pathfinder Society people will kill me if it's not it. So that has to get done. If there's extra time, the character sheet layouts is the next thing on the list, but it just depends if I have time to do it or not.
I'm most ready to see is there a working version of the Quantum Roll leaderboard yet?
No.
That's the thing I'm most excited about.
I mean, there's a working version, but there's no data in it right now. So it won't be live until.
Jazzed for that. That's my feature request right there. When is that?
That's already done. It just has to go live. So, but anyway, yeah. So I get that there are some games like Dungeon World that require, right now that just so you know, right now there is a way to have sections in the character sheet and to hide them. Like the D&D 4e sheet, Alex, he figured out a way to do it with just CSS, where you can essentially click on a section and it'll hide itself or show itself. So you could basically have a Dungeon World sheet, and then you could have like a section for Wizard, and a section for Druid, and a section for Fighter, and then you could just only show the section that you needed for that particular class. It's just not very great in the sense of it makes the character sheet like really heavier than it needs to be, because you've got all the fields for every class for every character in the game, instead of just the ones you actually need on that character. So it's not ideal, but it is possible to do it right now, and that's what I would do if you were thinking about making a Dungeon World sheet. That's what I would probably do right now. So,
thank you for all the retweets, everybody. Appreciate that. We did get a nice spike of those just now. You are all awesome. The next question comes from Oliver Queen, the Green Arrow himself. Under notes, I was wondering, can an option be made that you would have a directory or file list type look? For example, you can place additional.
We already talked about this.
Main
We'll talk about this again.
No, not yet. Maybe one of these.
Rewind the live thing. And
Riley's so upset about this. Keep asking questions. It's fun to watch Riley squirm. Keith, how you doing, Keith? Is asking if there's any plans for updating or improving the graphic library management interface. Similar. Well, I would say the graphic library interface is something that we're also talking about this with like the way the marketplace displays results, with the way that there's a lot of things that we are interested in sanding there. It's just a question of when, where, and how.
Sorry,
especially, I feel like especially with mentors, with the stuff that they're getting now in terms of the exclusive mentor packs, like as that begins to grow and grow, there's definitely going to be a want for some better library management as we add 30 things every month to that. There's definitely going to be an increased desire to get that graphical library management better, but I don't know when that will come up. It's a good question, though. What we
Yeah.
would expect from Keith.
Yeah, well, and this is another of those examples of some people have a different experience than other people because some people only have 100 things they've uploaded, or they never bother looking at the art management thing because they just drag and drop it on the tabletop every time because they're not playing that many games. Other users, especially power users, might have 2,000 things in their library and they're trying to reuse them to save on space and yada yada yada. So it's just one of those things where
yada yada yada.
Well, just we have to again. It's all about priorities. So.
No. Oliver Queen threatened us.
Banned for life.
We'll visit you. At least it was in character. I appreciate that. So tabletop gaming, who I assume is our pal Dave Middleton. Riley sold me on tags versus folders, but to solidify this, you can have all the tag search function. Search all the sources between shown and archive files as to what you're trying to do a search for.
Oh, I'm not sure actually. I'll have to look into that. So basically, he's just asking if you can search between archive because right now, the archive folder is just says archived. Yeah, I'm honestly not sure. The thing with the archived ones is I can't remember. Basically, I just don't remember how much data we actually load until you unarchive it. And so the whole point behind archiving things is that it saves, the load times and it saves on. So anyway, I'll have to look into that. I really honestly don't know. It might be possible. It might not be possible. So that's a good. I'll add it to my list of things to look at. So. Okay.
Let's jump to a question from Nick. When adding multiple creatures, example 10 goblins from the same character sheet, the token sync attributes and initiative. Is there a way to add iterations without having additional character sheets for each creature? So you click and add Goblin 1, Goblin 2, etc.
This is known as adding mooks to the board, is what I've heard them called. I didn't come up with that word. Somebody else came up with it. But it's very easy to do.
Sounds bad. It sounds like a bad word.
What you want to do is create a default token for that character that's linked to the character sheet. But you don't link the bars to the actual attributes. So, for example,
there's actually a section of the wiki that
somebody wrote one. Yeah, it wasn't me. Somebody else.
I think I wrote this section.
Maybe. I don't know. No, I thought some forum user did. But anyway, essentially what you want to do is you want to set everything up except don't link the bars to the attributes. That way, when you drag and drop the mook, the token, the Goblin 1, Goblin 2, Goblin 3 onto the board, it'll start with all the right stats in terms of, the max health will already be set right and, that kind of stuff. But as you decrease the health, for example, it won't actually decrease the health of all the goblins. And the other nice thing that gives you then is, especially if you have your combat abilities set up as token actions, then every goblin you drop on the board will have access to the same library of actions. So essentially you can create a goblin. So think of the character as a type. So you have a goblin type, set up the right character actions, token actions and character abilities and all that good stuff. And you have attack, maybe AC, whatever. And then when you drag and drop on the tabletop, when you click on the token, you can just click on the top bar and click attack or whatever else you need to click. And all of your goblins will have that shared attack ability, so you don't have to keep updating it. So that's the correct way to do that, and it is possible to do. But it can be confusing because people always think, well, if I link it to a character, I have to set up all the attributes as bars, and you don't have to do that if you don't want to. And that's the kind of the key to doing those types of characters.
It looks like Frond did one at some point, but I know I did something in this realm as well. But if you look up Mook, it's linking tokens to journals is what it is on the wiki. How to set up tokens properly.
Just looking through this, so someone else just asked the exact same question about having multiple tokens.
Token visibility?
No.
Well, the next one's the token visibility. Same
and
question.
Token visibility, we covered that earlier too. So yes, we'll look at doing that where you can essentially
have questions.
Have the same kind of thing where it's like control by, I'll just say visible to, and you can pick that. We'll look at doing that. Can I get the dice to trigger a sound on certain rolls? Oh.
Like a cheer on a crit or a sad trombone on a fumble.
Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah. That would be depressing.
I mean, that's an API feature if I ever heard one. Like that's.
Well, the API can't play sounds right now, so that doesn't really work so good. But Maybe it should. I don't know. Yeah, that could be an API script. I mean, I don't know. Could I put that in to do that? Yes, but considering we already get like a legion of people complaining about the chat beep, I don't really want to mess with people's sound any more than I already have, to be honest. So, I don't know.
Just make it an option, Riley. They have to turn on.
Yeah, options. Options.
You know, I love those. I love options. I love.
I think the chat beep has become one of the funniest things in the world to me because I watch more and more of these Twitch streams, and so the chat group that we all use for like discussing what we're doing in Roll20 has the same sound set as Roll20. So I'll be watching a Twitch stream or have a Twitch stream on the background, and I hear the chat thing. It's like, oh, Riley or Richard said something. I need to check, and it's like, damn it, somebody just made a roll in that Twitch stream. Why would they do that? Why would they roll in Roll20?
Well, here's a fun softball, nice compliment question. Let's answer this question.
Softball. I don't know. Why do they call them softballs? Softballs are really painful balls to get hit by.
They're easy to hit.
I don't think. My guess is that originated before there was a such thing as softball, the sport. I figured that like hardball is like when you throw the ball. You know what I mean?
Okay. That's an interesting entomology.
Anyway, it basically is saying that how great Roll20 is, and they use it all the time. Now that they moved from California to Ohio, and that's exactly what I made it. So yay! I'm glad that that's how you're using it, and I'm glad that you're finding success with it because literally.
Also, speaking of Twitch, give the plug. This comment is from Distracted Elf, who does, I believe his streams are on Tuesday and Thursday midday. They're a good lunch stream. I stop in and watch them every once in a while. Playing Pathfinder.
Here's another fun question that we can answer. Are you aware of Will Wheaton's tabletop show? And if so, that they are now planning a similar show based on RPGs. Would you ever consider reaching out to him to try to expand your audience or user base?
That's one of those. It's very. I don't know. Dealing with outside entities at all, and I'm not talking about Will Wheaton specifically. It's interesting in terms of who wants to talk publicly about these things and who doesn't. But more and more we're seeing people like there's a big esports gaming scene that uses Roll20 and plays regularly. So if you guys watch Roleplay or Misclicks or any of those, and they're very willing to talk about us and what we're doing. But it's one of those things. I feel bad for Will Wheaton sometimes because he gets tweeted about. Like people will at him and at us, and he gets
like, "Have you heard about Roll20?" And then
he gets 50 questions about those a day, and must feel like we're putting people up to it. And it's one of if he's got people that he's gaming with in real life, what does he necessarily need Roll20 for?
I mean, obviously, I guess the answer to the question is. If they approached us about featuring Roll20 on the show, we would say yes, we'll absolutely probably do that.
Yeah.
So that's the answer. But I mean,
I would say like even in terms of priority, I think right now bigger priorities to us are getting publishers to put out content on Roll20. That's where a lot of my efforts are currently focused. But also to getting more with as big a component as Twitch is becoming, it's increasingly becoming silly that there's not a Roll20 Twitch channel. I think that's game type.
Not a channel, but yeah,
game type. Because so many people, they'll go in and they'll select Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder, and they're playing Warhammer, they're playing Pendragon, they're playing Dungeon World, they're playing all these different games, and what's facilitating that is Roll20. But that's one of those things those are ongoing conversations that we're trying to get somebody to pick up on the other side. But yeah, I mean, we're definitely aware of Will Wheaton and what he's doing for the hobby. And as a matter of fact, when they did International Tabletop Game Day, what was that, last month? We had a really good day, and we're tweeting, with the International Tabletop Day hashtag and that sort of thing, and joining in on the fun there because we definitely had a good time that day.
We were at dinner at Gen Con last year.
Yeah.
And Will Wheaton was like 4 tables away from us. And there was a big debate at the table about whether or not we should go introduce ourselves and say something to him, but we decided to be cool and not bug him. Yeah. So maybe we blew it. I don't know. You guys can decide. But
I think that's blowing. He probably appreciates that, he doesn't want to get business when you're eating.
So, and then Keith was asking, and this is again a question we can definitely answer right now. Is there a time frame for adding new capabilities regarding card decks? And the answer to that question is next update is when we'll be doing that.
Yeah,
so,
this summer we're going to see some card update moving and shaking. And honestly, a lot of the card deck features out there, thank Keith.
Someone who constantly harasses us to do it.
For putting, well, I mean, the things he did in terms of putting Arkham Horror into Roll20 definitely changed the way we looked at, oh, here's how some of these games are going to play in the system, and made us...
I would say, Keith was ahead of the game in terms of putting board games and, you know, really heavily card-based RPG. You know, he was doing that, like, 2 years ago when Roll20 first came out, even.
Before it was a good idea.
Before it was a good idea. And now we're at a point where there's a lot of people who are trying to do that, and so...
He was like, these decks don't quite work right. Right? He's like, oh, you're silly. Of course they work right. Like, how many decks are you using? He's like, 15. He's like, 15?
What? What are you doing? Supposed to use like 2.
No.
But
I sat down and did, and Riley was with me for some. Richard was with me too. We did a couple play tests on card-based systems that people are looking at doing modules of soon, and got some feedback and some ideas. So we're kind of...
Well, and the good thing is the majority... We've gotten feedback now from, I think, 2 different module people, maybe even 3, and we've gotten feedback from people in the Mentor forums. And the good news is almost all the feedback aligns very closely, meaning you guys are all asking for like the same 3 or 4 things that you really need. And that's really good, which is the best thing, because usually what happens is we get like 30 different feature requests, you know, and then we have to figure out which. But it's really easy when everybody, when you have 20 people shouting at you and they all want the exact same thing. It makes it a lot easier to figure out what to do. So that's good.
But I do think as we come to the end of the mega update, we still have 3 weeks left on Data Delve before it's live, and we are definitely already itching for, because right now everything is polishing and refining what's there, documenting what's there, and everybody's brain space is definitely starting to move to that. Oh, we want to start doing the next thing. But
no, not mine. Oh,
whatever. I have seen you get excited in these sessions where we're sitting down with people. Go, ooh, that's a good idea.
It is, but I have to not think about those things. Otherwise, nothing ever gets done. Like if that's how I did things, there would never be no actual features coming.
It's not that you're not excited about it. It's that you are punishing your brain every time you think about.
I mean, really, think about like if I just did everything that excited me about Roll20, then we wouldn't have a program. Like we would just have a random collection of semi-finished, features that didn't actually work. So someone has to sit down and actually like fix the bugs and make sure that all works. And until I can hire somebody whose job that is, so I can only work on the exciting stuff, then it's up to me. So
hires. One of these days, hires.
Let's see. What new features for GMs/DMs and players can we expect in the near future? So there's just a completely generic question. I mean, the next update, like I said earlier, it hasn't been completely planned yet, but we do know it's going to heavily feature card updates, and it's going to have some kind of a focus. It's going to be the start of a focus on looking at how can we make Roll20 work better for board games and card games and things that aren't just tabletop pen and paper RPGs.
Yeah.
I think that's all we know so far, right? I mean,
yeah. I have a lot of things that I'm hoping to sneak in there related to the market.
There's really like a laundry list of things that we want to do, and then we pick out what's actually going to make it. what do we actually have time to get done? So
it's a balance between like what's going to be there for subscribers, as to what's going to be there for free users, as to what's going to be there. Like there's so many different factors that go into what ends up making a final update. The only thing I would say for certain is that we really do like this longer update schedule, because it gives a chance that people actually know what's in an update. Like Data Delve, people out there have a really good idea of that. It's character sheets, the quantum roll, which is both the leaderboard and this way of that are now our entropy, the way that we are randomly generating numbers is splitting a particle of light, or the fluctuations of like, the ridiculous overkill, like we're more random than dice now. And then it's the server upgrades, and people know that in a way that when we were doing one feature and a little update rapidly, and then we'd get people on the forums 2 weeks later like, can I do this? And we just did that. So it really has helped this larger update schedule. So when we know exactly what that next update is, we will be sharing that and talking about it for a couple months. and really, people will have a chance to see what it is, and then mentors will have a chance to give feedback and help us refine it, which is really, I don't know, this new update schedule, I think we all really like it. So
it's working well. And I think the other thing I was going to say on this topic is just that I don't know. Character sheets. There's always more stuff to do. First, let me say we're not stopping feature development by any. But character sheets were one of the last major pieces of like the original virtual tabletop idea that weren't in yet. So I'll be interested to see where we go next. I mean, like I said, I think now that's why we're thinking about things like card decks, things that aren't traditionally pen and paper RPG, heavily utilized features. And some of that is because RPGs are bleeding into board games and card games. And there's, like Thornwatch, they're starting to use those mechanics more. But part of that is just we're like, okay, we're doing pretty good on the pen and paper RPG side of things. How can we make this virtual tabletop work for other things you play on a tabletop? So there's, now we're trying to balance those things against each other and, all that good stuff. So, and then I think the other thing we're trying to do is figure out growth. I mean, I feel like Roll20 is a very complete program now. I feel like not that there's not plenty to do, but you can sit down and play a game. I mean, like let's just sit down and let's just take a step back for a moment. Think of a year and a half ago, there were so many things that weren't in yet. Oh, you can't. There's really not good characters. There's really not good handouts. There's really not good cards. There's really not dynamic lighting. There's really not this and this and this and this and this and this doesn't work and that doesn't work right. And there's so many bugs. You look at Roll20 as a program now. I mean, considering we have so many more thousands more people using it every day than we did back then, we get very, very few bug reports compared to what we did back then. Not that they don't come in, but yeah. I'd say that we're doing a lot better in that regard. There are feature requests that still come in, but a lot of them are for niche or more esoteric or more convenience features or something for a very specific game. If you just want to sit down and play D&D or Pathfinder or Dungeon World or any of those kind of games on Roll20, we've pretty much got you covered at this point. So I think a lot of our growth going forward isn't necessarily like what's the shiny new feature we can add, although we'll keep doing that. It's how do we get the word out to more people? How do we make it easier to sit down and play? For people who aren't as familiar with RPGs or with what I mean. Like if I'm new to Dungeons and Dragons.
A conversation we have a lot of times is just about like cleanup and how intuitive things are and things like that we can. People that have had to come up with elaborate workarounds and things like that to get things done. Hopefully, we'll have more and more things where it's intuitive and quick to sit down and do it. And looking at stuff like that is what's going to continue to expand the user base and better the program for everybody. I mean, the easier this thing gets to use, the better it's going to be, and the longer it's going to last. And just it'll save. I think too, there's something to be said for time save, which is the way we're constantly talking about modules. Like the benefit there is as a game master, you can just go in and get moving. The more things we can do like that overall for the application, that it's just, oh, here we go. We get bunches of questions now about bulk image uploads for card decks and things like that. Where what are the ways that we can make this go faster?
Sure. Here's a good question to answer.
Yeah.
Have you given any thought to making a more in-depth tutorial video? The basic ones available are great, but I find the GM a bit lacking. Perhaps an updated one involving the newer available features. Yeah, and the answer is yes, we're doing that.
We're actually, our moderator Kristen Carlson actually has a new set of videos that's coming out soon that approaches this for people to also who are brand new to RPGs. So like they're swinging by Roll20 because they've heard it's a way to play Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder and all these things that they've heard about, but they've never actually done any of that. And so she's got a whole set of videos that is running through. Okay, here's what an RPG is. Here's how you do it in Roll20. Go, 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 go. And they're really fun videos.
And she's a lot better at making videos than I am too.
She's a lot better at making videos than any of us are.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're doing okay, but
I think the fun thing is too, like they're good enough videos that I know what an RPG is. I don't need this presentation, but it's interesting enough to see the way that she's describing it and giving the information that I don't instantly fall asleep when I'm watching these videos. So I think that means it has a lot of hope for people out there who are brand new and are trying it out. But we're beyond that, more in-depth feature tutorials. That's something she really wants to get into and is talking about. So I would expect some of those to be coming down the pipeline over the summer, would be my guess. But the first few videos, I wouldn't be surprised to see them here, probably even before this update comes out, hitting the wiki.
Yeah. And specifically about the GM, like I'm assuming you mean the GM overview video, which is the original question. It's always a trade-off again, because on the one hand, we added a lot of new, I think this is where the new update schedule does help with that, because before it was just ridiculous, because we would make the video and then 6 weeks later it'd be out of date because we just got with a new update and there's new features that we're not talking about in the video. And obviously we don't have the time, and no one wants us to spend the time redoing that video every 6 weeks. But, I think it's probably, especially now the character sheets will be in, and that's going to be so core, I think, to how most people are going to start using the application, that, yeah, we'll probably have to redo that one as well. So there's some new kinds of videos that we haven't done before coming out, and then, yes, we will continue to update the ones we have done until Kristen gets around to making those better than I do.
I feel like it's also worth pointing out that there are people outside of us that are doing more and more things there, too. Like Tabletopping has a in-depth video series now where you can go and check out some of the more high-end features and how they are implemented in David's games and things like that. So it's worth looking out there just for Roll20 tutorials and seeing what exists outside of us. And we try to retweet and share those things on Google Plus and things like that, so you know where those resources are. But more of that in the future.
Someone's asking about looking for group.
Ooh, yeah.
I mean, they just want to know, can we make it better? And I think the answer is obviously yes. And we want to. It's very hard. It's very, very hard, especially with RPGs, to figure out what makes a good group and to try to get people together to play in a way where it's not going to fall apart. Everyone gets along. How do you? We're not Match.com. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have their technology of relationship building. Or whatever.
It's a whole different subset. But the other thing is too right now that we're seeing on the looking for group setup is these super groups that are more advertising, like we're playing in this language, or we're playing anime specific games, or we're doing something that is
advertising their Roll20 subculture instead of their actual physical game they're playing every week.
And that is a problem that we've talked about needing to address sooner than later. We also need to go in and change the list of games a little bit. There's a few games that aren't getting quite enough play, and a few games that have increased to the point that we should probably put them in the list. And I started compiling lists for that. I don't know when I will get that done, but that is definitely something that we would like to do.
But yeah, I think obviously we agree. And he says, basically having Roll20 is great, but if nobody plays it, and can't find groups, it's a problem. And I think that when we ask people, why did you cancel your Roll20 subscription, or what's keeping you from playing a game on Roll20 more often, the number one thing everyone always says is, my group fell apart. I can't find anyone to play with. Yada yada yada. So it's like, we get that this is a problem, and we're trying our best to figure out the best way to do it, but it's not like, finding a random dungeon group for World of Warcraft. I mean, you know what I mean? You're going to be with these people for months, not 2 hours, and, everyone plays RPGs differently, even the same RPG game. We actually went to a talk at PAX East that was about this topic. What was it called? I forget. But basically it was talking about how hard it is to find a gaming group.
Essentially it was why nobody wants to play with you.
Yeah, well, it was just, they started from a general broad sense, and then it went down to things like, different play styles, different levels of experience in the game, different ability levels in the game. I mean, power. I mean, for RPGs, power gaming versus not power gaming, role players versus combat-oriented people. It's just.
My
gosh.
Type of game. Time zone.
Time zone. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff, and some of them are easy. Obviously the game system you're playing, how many people can play. That's all easy stuff. But then what do you do to to keep the group? Because when the group falls apart, I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, it's play styles conflicting. And so how do you figure that out?
I think real life can conflict and take people out, and I don't know. There's a lot of factoring in there to figure out the quote unquote Match.com setup. It's just we don't have all the answers to that yet, but we are definitely looking at it. Like, it's not something that we're looking for group. Like,
we're not saying, it's fine. No, we're never talking about this again.
No,
it's just not folders versus tags.
No, this is something that we're actively, like, within the past few weeks, have had in-depth conversations about how are we going to fix looking for group and make it better. So it's definitely in the process.
And at the same time, the more people that use Roll20, it's kind of like a chicken and egg problem. Online communities always have this problem of, it's like, well, there's nobody to play with. Who wants to play this game that I'm really into? You know what I mean? Well, but because there's not people on the site. Well, no one's joining the site. And I think luckily we haven't had that problem. Roll20's growth has been substantial and it's been sustained. And so the more people that come, when we get to 500,000 users, which is almost about to happen, when we get to 600, 750, a million, there's more people that have the play style you're going to want to play with, that can play at the time you want to play, that want to play the game you want to play. And that makes it so there's the increase in the pool of people will help that naturally as well. But at the same time, right now, looking for group tool, there's like 15 pages of listings that would take an hour just to go through them all. So figuring out ways to make the tool itself better.
Well, narrowing it down to, and I think it's obnoxious when you're looking at one of those mid-level games where there's not a ton. So like 13th Age, where there is probably 5 or 6 games, but then you look and 3 of them are these subculture. We're just advertising anime games and anywhere that we could possibly get people to talk about anime. It's like, well, I mean, I don't have anything wrong against playing anime games, but are you actually going to play a 13th Age anime games, or are you just advertising anime games in every single subcategory you can select? Oh.
Yeah.
So there's some of that we definitely need to curb quickly.
Just knock off a few of these that won't take very long. Will there ever be an option to select a group of tokens and run a macro on all of them? Say roll initiative for a select group of tokens. It might be easier. I couldn't do it before, but now that we had the @selected, so I probably could figure out a way to do it with @selected. So it's on my list somewhere. I've already had that on the list for a while. But yeah, it's possible that's coming in a future update. Attaching question statements to inline roles. I assume you mean role queries. The problem with inline role and I get questions about this on occasion. Roll20 has its own unique order of operations, and it's documented on the wiki. But the way it works is like some things are first processed, and dice queries are processed before inline roles. And the reason that we have to do that is because some people like to put inline roles in their dice queries, and so it just like doing it that way would make it the other way not work. And so trying to figure out a way to make both of them work is really hard, and I haven't figured out a way to do it yet. So right now, no, there's not a way to add rule queries to inline rules the way I think you're talking about doing it. If I'm wrong about what you're asking, then maybe be more specific. But it's just going to be hard to do from a programming perspective. And we already answered the visibility question. Oh, well, here's one we can talk about. Will it be possible in the future for GMs to share or copy campaigns for other GMs to use in their campaigns, such as maps made entirely in Roll20? No. It's the answer to that question. And for fairly obvious, we actually had somebody on the forums, and sorry, I'll sound less incredulous. There was someone on the forums the other day who actually asked point blank, basically like the feature request was, let me share copyrighted music on Roll20. Like that, they weren't even like hiding the fact that that's what they wanted. That was just the title of the feature request. Let me share copyrighted. And then they were like, I know you have SoundCloud, and but SoundCloud's pretty clear about not letting me upload copyrighted music. So I don't want to get in trouble by uploading copyrighted music to SoundCloud. So I want you to host it, so I don't get in trouble. And it was like,
nope.
Like, do you just not want this to exist? This is like, we will get sued into oblivion if that happens. So the RIAA and the MPAA are very sue-happy organizations. Like, they will sue us. So
and that's one of they'll send takedown notices to stuff that is actually like legit on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like they're running programs that are out there hunting for this crap. No thanks. Let's not get into it. Like,
right. And we work with people who create. So basically the reason you can't do this right now, and we'll probably never be able to do it, is simply that we can't verify that the stuff you put in your campaign, A, didn't come from the marketplace, for example. B, isn't other copyrighted stuff from another source. When you're changing it from using it for personal use to distributing it, which is what sharing it with other GMs would basically be, then it's a whole different ballgame. That's just a whole different ballgame. And so there would just be impossible for us to regulate that and make sure that you're not sharing copyrighted stuff.
Artists have to eat.
Yeah. So I think that's but here's what you can do. You can talk to Nolan, and you can make a module. And then if you have all of the permission from everybody, you say, well, I'm going to make my own art, or I know an artist who's going to work with me, or I'm going to contact an existing Roll20 marketplace artist, and I have the license for the game, or it's an OGL license for the game, and it's my content, I wrote the story. If you have all your ducks in a row and you want to share something with the Roll20 community, we will absolutely facilitate that, and you can even make money off of it.
Beyond that, if you don't want to be the one responsible for that time, we had a wonderful Twitter response earlier. If you want to tweet your favorite publisher and ask them, and not to, we were talking about this with poor Will Wheaton earlier, but I don't feel as much sympathy for the publishers out there that we've had conversations with that are like, well, I don't know if we got the time, and I don't know if there's enough of a crowd. If there's enough of a crowd, we're going to hit 500,000 users in June.
Yeah.
Tweet.
I know what
your
the
favorite publisher.
The question is usually related to something like, I went through all the work of putting Rise of the Rune Lords into Roll20, and I want to share it with the community because I don't want everyone to have to put the amount of effort I put into it, and mine probably looks better than theirs, and I want to share it, freely. And we get the sentiment behind that, but until we get the okay from Paizo that yes, we can put Rise of the Rune Lords on Roll20 on the marketplace, then we just can't do that because that's illegal.
So tweet Paizo.
So yeah, I just like what Nolan's saying is basically like it's not up to us. So if it was up to us, we would absolutely we would have all the stuff on the marketplace.
Well, and it's one of those things. We could put it at an affordable price point so that you could go get these things off the marketplace and be able to play and save so much time. So.
Well, anyway, so yeah, we hate to be jerks, but it's one of those things where we have to be the adults in the room. Yeah, we have to be the adults in the room and say, sorry, everybody, we can't let you do it. We wish we could, but we can't. So,
Oh, here's a question about merchandise. My players tend to shy away from subscriptions since they're not running the campaign. Apart from T-shirts, are you considering other merchandise to fund the site in the future? Yes, I'm looking at both merchandise and who we would do that with. I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to be super fast about coming about, but I am hopeful that we're going to have some other merchandise and a more sustained store in the not too distant future, hopefully before the year's out. But those conversations are ongoing. But that is something that we are actively looking at and hoping to make happen. Because it's crazy. Like we put up that Teespring campaign. What was that? Monday, and it's already funded. 50 people have bought shirts. When you have 50 people that'll buy shirts in less than in 48 hours, like once you're to that point, it's becoming more and more apparent that this is somewhere that we should spend some time on. It's just a question of getting it together and making certain that it's the quality that we want, that it ships the way we want, and it adds a whole nother wing into what we're doing. So we've got to do it right when we do it. But yes, we are definitely interested in doing merchandise because we got a fun logo. Like, we should want to put it out there more, in my opinion.
Let's see. Well, someone just asked, will pre-written campaigns be available from publishers like Paizo on Roll20 anytime in the future?
Twitter. Go to Twitter right now and tweet your favorite publisher 6 times. Why aren't you putting out content in... Tweet your least favorite publisher. We'd probably work with them, too.
Let's see. It's not way down here. Someone asked a question really, really early. Like, this is like the first question asked. Are there any plans to support GIF animations in the handouts section? I mean, it's a technical limitation that we don't do that right now.
It's the way we render things. Like it just
well, there's no easy way to, and there's also no easy way to resize GIF images very quickly with what basically the tool we're using in the background that resizes images. So no, there are no plans currently to do that. I'm more interested in GIFs on the tabletop than I am in the handouts and the character sheets, to be honest. I mean, I know that people would probably want to be able to see their little tokens, move around and do stuff, and it's just the way that Canvas rendering and HTML5 and all these browser technologies we use work right now. It's not very easy to do, so that's why we haven't done it yet. And it's the cool thing about Roll20 is, from a technical standpoint, it only renders when you actually do something that needs to be rendered. So, for example, when you actually scroll around the page, it's rendering. But when you just sit there, look at the table, it's not using any. Like if you open up like your activity monitor or your task manager and look at the CPU percentage, it won't be using hardly any CPU when you're just sitting there looking at the screen. If you had a GIF animation, it would have to constantly be rendering all the time because every time the frame changes, you have to re-render the whole tabletop. So if you have a GIF that changes its frame every 1 second, then you're constantly re-rendering, the screen. So not only is it difficult from a get the image resized properly and uploaded properly standpoint, it would also be a big performance hit in terms of, what's the level of computer that can run Roll20 for mobile devices, yada, 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 yada. So there's good technical reasons why we can't do it yet. I'm not saying it'll never happen, but there'd have to be some changes to the way that the underlying technology works to make it more viable for us to want to do it.
Got some follow-up merchandise questions. I'm excited about. One is we need a cute mascot to make some extra funds. Well, actually, we have a whole set of mascots that one of these days I think we would love to take into that arena, and that's House of War is written by us about, in some ways, the characters that we have played in adventures. So there's a lot that we would like to do with those characters eventually, and we've got all sorts of pretty artwork that we could use and play with to do things there. It's just a matter of when we sit down and do it. And another question is that we're called Roll20. What about our own brand of dice? It's a thing of finding the right vendor who makes it the right price point and ships it to the right place so we can.
The virtual tabletop is going to make physical dice. That's kind of funny.
I mean, I think that's one of those. There's more and more people using Roll20 in the physical space, and I do think that people would like a bag with that logo on it and their own special pink die. But as for when we're going to do that, I think it's about finding the right, somebody who's going to make it for the right amount, and then you've got to buy those in advance. We have to buy 500 of them so it doesn't cost as much, so that we can sell them at $2 more and make something off of it, and then ship them, and then. So there's a lot to do that. But like I said, I really am. I had a conversation this past week about somebody about. Could we rent space in this warehouse, and would you be willing to do the shipping on this and that? And so it's not something that we're ignoring in the least. It's just a matter of when it's going to come together. Because it's weird to think about from our perspective, because to some extent it's only been 2 years, and this is still that little program that we just used. Like, we made it to play our games together, but there's like 500,000 people almost asterisk using this now, and so the ownership that they feel for it increases with every day, and so giving them stuff that lets them present that ownership is cool.
I really think. Look at the rest of these questions.
How about the Star Wars one real quick about the D6 character sheet? That's a question where that's all about what the users are creating. We are not going in and creating individual sheets right now, so either you, as a mentor, need to hop in there and play with that, or find a mentor who is into that game and coerce them, blackmail them.
Now, that said, I don't know if Star Wars D6 is the same thing as Star Wars Saga Edition. I don't know enough about that role-playing universe or game system setup to know, but there is one made for Star Wars Saga Edition.
Is there a 3.5 sheet yet?
Someone just made a 3.5 sheet. Yeah,
that's awesome.
So
we haven't mentioned the contest at all.
Oh yeah. Speaking of this,
there's a contest going on right now. I think the top 4 or 5 sheets there's a
3
grand prize with a free T-shirt. Yeah, sorry. 3.
The grand prize is you basically get to do this Q&A thing with us for half an hour, but you're the only person who gets to ask questions. So
and you get a T-shirt.
And you get a T-shirt. That's the grand prize. Then there's 2 runners-up that are going to get free T-shirts, and then everybody who submits any character sheet is going to get a special achievement that you can only get for doing that on the Roll20 site, so everyone can see how awesome you are and that you're giving back to the community, which was something that everyone really appreciates, I know. So, yeah, and since we announced the contest, we've had an influx of the number of sheets being made, and especially what's cool is a lot of people have started making sheets for more niche systems that I think they would like. There's somebody who made a sheet for Mouse Guard, and he openly said, like, well, I mostly play Pathfinder, but someone already made a Pathfinder sheet, so I wasn't going to bother making a sheet, but I saw the contest and wanted to enter, and so I'm making a Mouse Guard sheet, which is a game that I played like one time, but no one's made a sheet for yet. And that's exactly what we wanted to happen. So it worked exactly right.
Sinister.
Yes, I love it when that works.
But yeah, it's cool to see what people are making, and there's still, 9 days left for that? I think the 16th is the cutoff on that.
16th is the cutoff, yeah.
So get in there and make sheets.
If you're a mentor, you can make the sheets. If you're not a mentor, you can still try to make them, although you'll definitely want to probably team up with a mentor to test it out for you.
Yeah.
The documentation on how to make them is public, and anyone can do it. It's just HTML and CSS, but without access to the dev server right now, you're going to have a hard time making sure it works before you submit it. And then, but I think, right now, like I said, I think I said at the beginning, we have like 25 systems that already have sheets, all the major ones, obviously, that you would think of, from D&D 3.5 now to 4E to Pathfinder and all the major ones, but lots of small ones, too, that people love. And that's going to just keep increasing. This has been out for, 2 weeks, 3 weeks now, character sheets? So I mean, if we can get 20, the community makes 25 in the first 2 or 3 weeks. Imagine how many we're gonna have 6 months from now. We're gonna have hundreds probably. So, I think you can certainly make your case, and if Star Wars D6 is not the same as Saga Edition, you can certainly go on the forums and be like, hey, help me make this sheet. But at the same time, wait a month or two, and I bet there'll definitely be a sheet out for it.
Well, that's the thing too. When you put out that initial video on character sheets, half of the comments were, "Why isn't this sheet out?" And
I know, because it just showed the Savage Worlds one I made, and they were like, "What about this sheet? What about this sheet?" And I think people just don't understand that we're not making them. It's like people will be like, someone said something like, "There's finally a 3.5 sheet. That was long overdue," and it's like, well, sorry, not up to me. I'm not the one making them. So.
Yeah. Related, do we go to conventions to promote Roll20? Yes. We just went to PAX East. We're headed to Gen Con in August. I'm looking at PAX Prime, and I'm also looking at a couple other small conventions that I feel like would be a good fit for panel-wise. And that's something, too, if you know somebody that runs a convention and you want them to reach out to us, go for it. We're up for doing more and more of that sort of thing. And it's fun to do. We really like... Gen Con has been a blast.
This will be our third year. Yeah, this is our third year. We always have a good time. I mean, the panels always turn out really well. We always do a panel, and we get a lot of people who know about Roll20 already. We get a lot of people who are new to the idea of tabletop gaming online. And, hopefully, I think our room holds 100 this year. Hopefully we'll fill it up. So
I think, too, the other thing that's fun is it's fun. Look, we don't get to see each other physically enough, the three of us. But beyond that, meeting people... When we were at PAX East, we got to meet Greg Taylor and Fernando Dominguez, who both do stuff on the marketplace. At Gen Con, I got to meet Devin Knight, who does tokens on the marketplace. It's fun to... I send 6 emails to those guys a week, so getting to see them in the real world and talk and stuff like that is always a blast. So conventions are awesome. It also gives us a unique opportunity to run up to publishers and, hey, you should really think about, and it's fun every time we approach them, the number has gone up significantly in terms of the number of users that we're...
There's got to be a number at some point. Well, they'll say yes.
When we're saying there's 50 billion, there's more than the population of the Earth using Roll20, maybe they'll wisen up. But that's one of those things too. It was really cool.
I doubt it.
But at PAX East, a certain large publisher was having a panel, and somebody asked the panel, "Hey, what do you use to play games online? My group's moving away from each other." And the panelist was like, "Oh, you could just use a Google Hangout, and we are more than aware that this publisher is aware of our existence." And the crowd apparently started hollering, "Use Roll20! Use Roll20!" Which is a huge compliment to us and really cool, and makes us know, eventually some of these guys are going to have to wise up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think should we go and start wrapping this up? It's been over almost an hour and a half.
Yeah. Probably wrap
it. I don't really see anything
in
else.
order to gauge the direction of the site, have you considered releasing weekly polls? We do polls probably every 3 months or so is what the average seems to be. That's something that if you're on the newsletter, you'll get polls depending on what we're doing and what we're looking at working on. And that really does influence. We were talking about a poll earlier in this chat. So keep an eye out for those because we absolutely do poll the community.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and we hope that we answered some of your questions. And I'm gonna start a list of banned questions for the next one of these. Haha, kidding. But yeah, I think these are always fun to do. We should do them more often, really. We only do these once every quarter, but we should really do them more often. So, but yeah, Data Delve, May 28th. So I'm sure again everyone here hopefully has heard about it. If you haven't, oh my God, we are doing our job so wrong. So hope you guys are excited about that. And we've got some things out of this that are going on the to-do list, which is good. And like I said, some of the things you asked about were already on the to-do list, which is even better. So anything else? Either one of you saying? Oh, someone just said the patch notes for new revisions. If you go to the wiki, there's a page called the changelog. We list every update, all the major ones, and everything that's changed. So that's the place to go for that.
And our developers blog will always have stuff upcoming.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to blog.roll20.net, you can kind of go back through the previous blog posts and see us talking about this new stuff we're working on at that time, but most of which is out now. So
And there's videos and nice things there too that really give it a good presentation. So there are two places to check that out, both the blog and the wiki changelog.
Okay. Anything you want to say, Nolan or Richard, before we sign off?
What's the next thing that's coming up and out? And I think just that contest is going on through the 16th. Be certain to get in on that. Be certain to, if you haven't ordered a T-shirt yet, that's going to be going on till I think the 20th, maybe. There's a couple more weeks.
There's like 3 weeks and 3 days left or something.
Yeah. So there's more time on that, and then I'm trying to think what the next live something is. I know that there's something else live that I've got coming up, but as for what it is, I don't know. If nothing else, Data Delve, the 28th, everybody finally gets character sheets. Hooray! Get excited.
If anybody's going to be at Gen Con and they want to see us or hang out with us, just tweet at us or something. Let us know if you want us to do a meetup, or let us know what you want to see on the panels, that kind of thing. So we kind of engage reaction and see exactly how we want to tackle that.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for dropping by.
See you on the internets.
We'll be there on the internet.